Hello, everyone, and welcome to our coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us here on this Saturday late morning if you're on the West Coast, early afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Hope you're all having a good start to your weekend. We appreciate you stopping by for SpaceX's latest Falcon 9 flight from Space Launch Complex 4 East. Departure time is there on your screen, 10:55 a.m. Pacific, 1:55 p.m. Eastern, 17:55 UTC for those joining around the world. This is the final opportunity within today's launch window, but at this point in time, we can report that SpaceX is fueling its Falcon 9 rocket at the pad. So moving towards planned liftoff at, again, the time you see on your screen, just about 28 and a half minutes from now. Certainly appreciate the more than 630 of you who are watching along with us live today. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also want to thank our moderators in the chat for holding it down. We've got Astro Joe and Jeff Hansen on tap at this point in the count. You can help make the moderators' lives that much easier. Oh, and Rick Donner as well. You can help the mods out by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you post your messages in English so that our moderators can respond as appropriate. Also, that you refrain from delving into overt politics or religion, as well as hold off on typing in all caps. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just ask that you don't type in a huge block of them that takes up several lines of text. That way, the chat is a little more free for other folks to post their comments as well. Last but certainly not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated, and we will get along swimmingly. This launch, along with all of our other live launch opportunities, are made possible in no small part by our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Cumulus Granatus, Sulfur for Lunch, Jim Fowley, Lloyd Green, Norman Reitzel, and many, many others. Lost Spark, hello to you. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spacelightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Taking a look at the weather outlook down in the Vandenberg area, you can see that there's a little bit of a cloud setup happening right now over the pad. Visibility will be perhaps not the greatest on this one as far as takeoff. You can see there's quite a bit of cloud cover offshore as well. The Falcon 9 rocket will be flying in a southerly trajectory once it leaves the pads. So again, perhaps not the best visibility from the ground for this mission, but we'll see when we get our eyes on the rocket in about 20 minutes. T minus 24 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. Given that this is a West Coast venture, our photography team has this mission off, but they're getting rested and prepared for the launch attempt tomorrow, sending a Cygnus spacecraft on its way to the International Space Station. That's set to take flight from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, looking for a departure from that pad at 6:11 p.m. Eastern, 22:11 UTC. If you're not following our photographers on X, though, you can find them at their handles here. Adam is at aburn NYC. John is at John Pisani Photo. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. We are on Blue Sky Threads and Facebook if you're not on X. Want to welcome in new channel members Scott McGowan and Frank McGurk joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Also, thanks to Norman Reitzel and Cashpot for gifting a $2 and a £2 super chat, respectively. Really appreciate that from the both of you. Thanks for supporting our coverage today. As I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, SpaceX is fueling its Falcon 9 rocket as we speak. So, with 23 minutes on the board, let's go ahead and quickly step through the countdown timeline, let you know the milestones that are still ahead for SpaceX and what we've already passed through at this point. T minus 38 minutes is the point at which the SpaceX launch director would make the call on the start of prop load. Fueling began at the T minus 35-minute mark with the loading of RP1, which is a rocket grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen began flowing on board the Falcon 9's booster. First stage cryogenic helium began at the 30-minute mark. Same was true on the second stage a few minutes afterwards. The helium will be used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP1 loading wrapped up. And then T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds coming up next is the strong back chill down process. SpaceX will thermally condition the feed lines there at Pad 4 East prior to second stage LOX load, which is set to begin at T minus 16 minutes. 7 minutes out, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines will begin. This involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and that'll help to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank is full. At T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retraction sequence. First, the clamp arms will open up just beneath the payload fairings, and then the strong back, otherwise referred to as the transporter erector, will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. And here at Pad 4 East, it doesn't move at liftoff. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. At T minus 2 minutes, same will be true on the second stage. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, when we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, its automated start sequence, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. At the same time, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their final go for launch call at T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff in just a little more than 20 minutes now at 10:55 a.m. Pacific, 1:55 p.m. Eastern, 17:55 UTC for those around the world. Just minutes before we joined you live on air, a Russian Progress vehicle completed its docking sequence to the International Space Station, arriving at the orbiting outpost at about 1:33 p.m. Eastern Time. So a successful delivery of a few tons of cargo and science supplies to the Russian segment of the space station. And that comes just days ahead, or a day ahead, really, of the planned launch for the Cygnus spacecraft, which will dock to the Unity module on the ISS. That berthing process will be overseen by NASA astronaut Johnny Kim. Fellow NASA astronaut Zena Cardman will help support with the berthing process as well. Just under 19 minutes to go. Today's flight, delivering 24 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit, will feature one of the top rockets on our Falcon frequent flyers list. Let's give you a look at where things stand before this rocket takes off. Looking for the flight of B-1071, which will break out of its three-way tie right now to put it in second place as far as the most flown boosters for SpaceX. The company is working towards certifying its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece, alongside the payload fairings, the most seasoned of which has flown so far 33 times. As of September 11th, here is where we stand as far as the number of launches SpaceX has conducted with its Falcon rockets. Looking for flight number 115 today. For flight number 116, of course, that's coming up tomorrow evening. This will also be SpaceX's 532nd launch with a Falcon 9 rocket. A little more than 17 minutes on the clock. The thermal conditioning of the feed lines is still underway. Let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be flying once it leaves the pad. Talk a little trajectory, shall we? Upon departure from Space Launch Complex 4 East, there at Vandenberg Space Force Base, this rocket, set to take these satellites into a polar orbit, will head on a southerly trajectory with the first stage booster, B-1071, targeting a touchdown on the drone ship called, of course, I Still Love You. If successful, this will be the 151st good recovery for that particular drone ship and the 504th booster landing for SpaceX to date. A few minutes into the flight, SpaceX will jettison the payload fairings currently encapsulating the Starlink satellites. They'll splash down in the waters of the Pacific Ocean a little bit further downrange from where the booster is set to land on the drone ship. Once down in the water, they will be brought aboard one of SpaceX's recovery vessels and then brought back into port and then off to SpaceX's facilities at Vandenberg, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future flights. Just under 16 minutes to go now ahead of the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. At this point, SpaceX is now loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's second stage. Just about halfway through the pre-launch portion of our broadcast today. Want to thank the 1,500 plus of you who are watching along with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also want to thank channel member and moderator Jeff Hansen for a $10 super chat. Jeff says, go Vandy, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go Starlink, Godspeed, Baby Bird, 1071. Also want to thank Loki 3000 for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Loki. Talking about the payload that's on board today's Falcon 9 rocket launch is, of course, a batch of 24 Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites. This is set to be SpaceX's 82nd Falcon 9 launch of the year so far. These optimized Starlinks are notably lighter than the previously flown versions of the V2 minis. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. They were built up in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. And they'll be deployed at about 174 miles or 281 kilometers in altitude at a 97-degree inclination. All of the satellites that are part of Group 17 have been deployed into that polar orbit. Not this next week, the week that's coming up, but the week following that will be a series of briefings on the Artemis 2 program, where things stand, and a lot of information about the mission coming up early next year. As we're getting ready to head back to Houston for that reporting trip, would love to hear from our channel members about especially what would you like to learn more about the Artemis program, things that you want expounded upon, or things that you think would be interesting fodder for videos leading up to our big launch day coverage of Artemis 2. We have our Discord server set up, so go ahead and leave us your thoughts there. Love to start picking your brains as far as, for those of you who are supporting us on an ongoing basis, we'd love to, you know, respond to what your interests are as far as your space program and especially the moonbound component of it. So leave your thoughts there. We'll be checking that out, and hopefully we can turn some of those video ideas, materialize them into actual things that you'll be able to see. Just about 12 minutes to go now on this pre-launch process. Coming up at T-minus 7 minutes is when the engine chill sequence is set to begin. Just about 10 minutes remaining on the clock here ahead of the planned launch of the Starlink 17-10 mission, featuring the flight of the Falcon first stage booster B-1071. Before we go ahead and see it fly for a 28th time, let's talk about the flight history for one of SpaceX's launch leaders. Its flight history began with a mission for the National Reconnaissance Office, or the NRO, flying the NROL 87 mission back on February 2nd. That was followed by another NRO mission on April 17th. Actually, NROL 87 was the first Falcon 9 launch supporting an NRO mission, I believe, if memory serves. That was followed up by the German satellite SARA, stands for Synthetic Aperture Radar, launching on June 18th of 2022. Followed up by a pair of Starlink missions. It's Starlink 3-2 on July 22nd and 4-29 on October 5th. Next up was NASA mission SWOT, stands for Surface Water and Ocean Topography. This was a partnership between NASA and CNES, the French space agency. Also had some input from the Canadian Space Agency and the UK Space Agency. Another Starlink mission, 2-6 after that. And then the first in a series of 4 of the rideshare missions that this booster supported. We had Transporter 8 on June 12th. Couple more Starlink flights after that. Then Transporter 9 on November 23rd. That was a launch of 113 satellites on Transporter 9. A trio of Starlink missions followed that, and then you had another flight for the NRO. This time it was a launch of what are believed to be the Starshield satellites that make up what the NRO calls its proliferated architecture. After that, we have 4 more Starlink missions. You can see here on the screen. That was followed up by a mid-inclination rideshare mission called Bandwagon 2, launching on December 21st of 2024. Another batch of Starshield satellites for NROL 153. Another Starlink in February of this year. Back to Starshield again for NROL 192 on April 12th. Another Starlink on May 31st. Transporter 14 then on June 23rd. And the most recent flight for this booster was the Starlink 13-4 mission, which launched on July 31st. Six and a half minutes now. The engine chill sequence has begun, and we're coming up on the point at which the first stage RP-1 tank should reach flight levels. You should also be getting views of the Falcon 9 rocket coming up in just about 1 minute. T-minus 5 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. Want to welcome a new channel member, Margaret Allen Bergman, joining us with membership at the PAL leader level. Welcome aboard, Margaret. We're glad to have you with us.
Tanks are pressing for strong back retract. Strong back retract has started.
Good call there. We'll shortly be seeing the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, roughly 13, and it'll stay in that position up to and through liftoff. And there you see the strong back now in motion, starting to recline away from the rocket. In roughly 30 seconds, we should be hearing a call for first stage LOX load being complete.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call there from SpaceX. We should be hearing a similar call regarding upper stage LOX load right around the 2-minute mark.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The additional venting happening right now, though maybe a little hard to see in this view, those are the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
There's a little bit better vantage point. That additional venting releases the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad. Coming up on the final minute of the count, in which we'll hear the call out that the Falcon 9 is in startup. That's when it enters into its automated start sequence.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that automated sequence now underway, we're just waiting for the SpaceX launch director's go for launch call.
LD is go for launch.
And with that good confirmation, we're going to go ahead and step back on our commentary, listen along with you, and we'll be back with you on the other side of liftoff.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff. Go SpaceX, go Starlink.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Falcon 9 supersonic. Max Q.
Power and telemetry nominal.
And a good ascent so far, the Falcon 9 rocket passing through max Q, point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Coming up will be the chill down of
MVAC
the
chill.
Merlin vacuum engine right on cue. SpaceX thermally conditioning that upper stage engine ahead of the start of its first burn. We're coming up to a few events in fairly rapid succession as we watch Falcon 9 rocket pull away from the California coastline. First, we'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 25 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine, followed by the payload fairings jettisoning from the upper stage, exposing the Starlink satellites to the vacuum of space.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
All good callouts, good visuals. Waiting for fairing jettison momentarily.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Those fairing halves will make their way back to the waters of the Pacific Ocean, making their final splashdown under the support of steerable parachutes. A little more than 5 minutes into the flight so far, all moving along smoothly. Coming up next in less than a minute will be the entry burn, which will use 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines on the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster to dramatically slow that vehicle down in preparation for the start of the landing burn. as the Falcon booster makes its way back down towards the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. When those engines kick back on, the rocket is essentially flying through its own exhaust plume, which leaves a little bit
entry burn startup.
of residue on the booster, giving it that visually sooty characteristic.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Good calls there. The flight termination system on the booster, the FTS, has been saved. No longer needed at this stage in flight. As we were watching the booster continue its descent towards the drone ship, as we get to those final moments of the landing burn beginning, we'll also hear a call out for the FTS being saved on the upper stage.
Stage 1 transonic.
Booster now traveling below the speed of sound.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 in terminal guidance.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good touchdown for B-1071, completing its 28th trip to space and back.
MVAC shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Good calls there from SpaceX. A little bit of video breakup, but you can see the upper stage continuing on its planned trajectory, heading out over the waters of the Pacific Ocean. At this point in the count, the upper stage will continue on in this parking orbit, coasting until T plus 53 minutes and 39 seconds post liftoff. It will have a brief 2-second burn to circularize its orbit, and then it will be in a position to deploy the Starlink satellites at about T plus 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 31 seconds into the mission. Very smooth operation for SpaceX as it's now preparing for its next venture from here on the East Coast, the launch of a Northrop Grumman Cygnus spacecraft on a Falcon 9 rocket flying from from Space Launch Complex 48 Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We'll, of course, have much more to say about that in our dedicated coverage beginning about an hour and a half ahead of liftoff for that Falcon 9 rocket. Let's go ahead and turn now to our mission stats as they currently stand, with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, B-1071, that completed its 28th flight to date. This was the 532nd Falcon 9 launch so far. This was the 115th Falcon 9 launch of the year so far, the 159th orbital flight within the last 365 days. This was the 148th orbital launch for SpaceX from Slick 4 East, and the 216th overall orbital launch from that pad as well. Here's where the Falcon rocket bar chart now currently stands. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 151st good landing on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. It marked the 410th drone ship landing for SpaceX and the 504th booster landing as well. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 43rd orbital launch from California, the 121st orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 133rd from a U.S. rocket company, and the 211th orbital launch around the world. There have been 5 orbital mishaps so far this year. Here is where our pie chart now currently stands. Before we go, I want to welcome in new channel member Codism, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Also, big thanks to channel member Chuck Close for a very generous $25 super chat. Thank you so much, Chuck, for supporting us at that level. Really appreciate that. If you haven't hit subscribe already, now's a good time to do so as we're preparing for our next launch tomorrow. If you ring that bell icon, you'll be notified when our broadcast is beginning. I want to thank our moderators in the chat for helping us out today. To Joe, Rick, and Jeff, appreciate you for being with us. Also, thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. Most of all, biggest thanks goes to you for wherever you're watching from today. We certainly appreciate your time and attention, and we look forward to welcoming you back when next we are about to go live. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks, and until then, bye-bye.